Hey, welcome back to our fourth and final video on the CwC box jump game project. In the last video, we worked over animations. We looked at the parameters that we have to set to change states inside the animator, and those parameters allow us to transition between different states. We made it so that our character has a running animation at the start. We froze their rotation and their position using the rigid body component on the player. And we made it so that when they jump, they have a jump animation. Whenever they hit an obstacle, they have a dying animation. And we made it so they're unable to continue to jump when they are in the game over state, or when that boolean is true. Today we're going to kind of like spice it up a little bit. We're going to add some particles. We're going to add some music, add some sound effects. So all useful, very useful things to be doing. So let's jump straight into it. I'm going to go over here into my project. Back into my assets folder, and we have course library, and in here you have a folder called particles, and there are two particles in here, dirt splatter and explosion smoke. And what I'd like you to do is take the explosion smoke and just drag it into the hierarchy, and as soon as you do that, you will notice that in your scene you will be able to see that occur. Let me drag this down a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. So let's double click. I'm going to find this thing, and when I drag it into my hierarchy, I'm going to open this transform. It's kind of just, looks like it just placed it randomly. I'm going to reset this. Let's put it 0, 0. And so when I press play, you can see it kind of do this huge puff of smoke. So restart and restart. And that looks, huge. It's probably not what we want. So I want to explain to you how a particle system works and how we can modify it. So a particle system basically creates a instantaneous, or just like a smaller simulated module of like mini physics, essentially. It's its own self-contained visual apparatus that has its own physics based on what we put here. So in the inspector, you have a particle system, and there's a lot going on. There's a duration. And there's a looping option to let it keep playing over and over, like this. We want to probably turn that off. There's a pre-warm option so that when the game starts, it will already have that going. It's usually good for like lighting effects. There's a lot of things that we can control. And the way this panel works is, as you scroll down, you have all of these options to change. When you click on it, it'll open it up. And if you click on the name again, it will close it down. And then there's a small check mark next to it that you can turn on and off to turn off that feature. So, I apologize for yawning there. What we should do is, there's so much you can do. This is how we do lighting effects. We make fires in games, all these things. There's materials built for these. There's rendering. So the way it looks in the world. I think what we should do, though, that looks really big. So how about this? Let's start off with size over lifetime. So when it starts, right now the size is set to being very big, and it's going down. So I'm going to hit this little arrow here. And let me look at random between two curves is fine. Let's hit curve. And when I'm on curve, I'm just going to drop down this opening size a little bit. So this, when it starts, it's going to be much smaller, and then I'm going to take this little handle and stretch it out so it's like a smoother. Let's just do like that. But let me still, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to drag this down so it starts smaller. So if I press play, they do look smaller. There's still a huge effect range there. Probably way too big for what we're doing. So I might even go smaller than this. And can I make this a smaller range? Let's press play. It is better, but it's still a very, very long time, lifetime. So how about let's get a size over lifetime. Let's maybe go look at our emission. Let's see what we have. Rate over time and rate over distance. So maybe change that. That's a constant. That's okay. So even though, you would think I would prepare for this, but I want to go through like the process of how I think about these things. So starting lifetime is at 4. So if you hover over this, it'll give you give you an idea of what it means. So this is how long each of these last. What if so it has a random range between 4 and 6. let's have it make them die off a little bit quicker. So I might just go like 1 to 2. See what this does. So like they're dying off a lot faster. That looks better. Also, the start speed is pretty fast. Let's reduce the speed. Let's see what that looks like. So they now move slower. And maybe let's go down to, so it's the gravity modifier means it's working, it's lighter than normal gravity. Play on awake. You know, make sure play on awake is not triggered. This is not on. The reason why we don't want this to be on is because it will start when the game starts, and that's not what we really want to do. Finally, max particles. I want to reduce this like a lot. Let's go to 100. I don't know if this is going to do much. Should reduce our numbers a little bit. Yeah, I really want this not to emit that way. So let's look at emission. Let's go to shape. Okay, so right now it's emitting as a box. What if I emit it as a, maybe do it as a cone? So it should be giving me the cone here in the inspector. Maybe I can close this up. There it is. It's kind of hidden. So right now it's like tilted that way. So maybe if I take its, let's rotate it on the X maybe, yeah. No, that's fine. X is fine. So leave that alone. Let's do Y. Let's rotate it. This, you know, I think I might want to go X. I think I want to kind of go downwards. So I'm going to go down, let's say maybe 90. And now I can use this tool to move it up some. Let's see if it looks weird like that. Yeah, it isn't going upward as much. Emit from the base, that's totally fine. And you know what, for all intents and purposes, I think this is okay. But you really take some time and play with this and kind of get a sense of what you want. Another thing we can also do, that's always like useful to play with, is velocity over time. This might actually be what we want. Maybe we want this to slow down. So velocity is its starting speed, and as it, you know, over time it will slow down. Let's linear x, y, random between two curves. How about I reduce the speed modifier so that it runs a little bit slower? Yeah, that looks a little bit better. That speed modifier. I'm going to even go to like 0.5. Because this is going to be like when we run into an object. I kind of like that. I think that looks okay. So one more thing I was going to mention, sorry, before I distracted myself, was to do color over lifetime. And the starting color looks like dark gray to white. So I can just click on this. And I might want to change the first color. So the top, so this is your opacity here. So you can start more clear, more see-through over time. But I want to go with a white smoke. So to change the color, you click on the bottom one, hit here, and I might go for like a more white here, and I'll try the opposite just to see what it looks like. Let me turn my alpha back up. So click on the top one. That should be all the way. Let's do this one right here. I'm going to pull that one back up. And let's make this one darker. This is just what I want to do. So let's see what it looks like. I kind of like that. That looks good to me. So particle effects, you can tell there's a lot of options. You can spend a lot of time in these. And so I would encourage you when we're finished with this project to go back and try to play with these and see what effects you can do. And this is someone's job. There's people who this is their whole job, is to develop these colliders. So we want this to occur whenever the player hits an obstacle. And so I think the best way to do this is just go ahead and take this and drag this and make it a child of the player. So when you do that, you'll see that it is now inside of the player object here. Great. And I also want to set its position. I got it set pretty good by resetting my position. And I'm going to keep it here because he's going to hit them off his chest. So I might just drag this up. So that looks pretty great. I think so, at least in my mind. So let me click on this player. And now we want to go ahead and trigger this in our player controller script. So let me open up that script. Assets, scripts, box player. So we've been getting components like our rigid body and our animator, but this is not a component. This is a game object that is a child. And we could just go find game object by name, but instead let's just do it in the inspector. Like we've done before, we've changed numbers in the inspector. So let's do it as a public variable. So in line 12, public, and we need to say what type of variable this is going to be, and or what type of game object it is. And this is definitely a particle. I gotta spell it right. Particle system. I don't know why spelling's so hard. And the name is going to be, I think we'll just go with explode particle. Yeah, particle. It's one of those words that the more you say it, like it becomes less of a word. So we have a public particle system. We have to tell it which particle system in the inspector, which is totally fine. And we want this to, we don't have to get it in the start method because it will get it in the inspector. So that's fine. This is called initializing. When we get something here in the start, we'll see that in a minute. We won't need to do that. So when do we want this to trigger? Well, we want it to trigger whenever we collide with an obstacle. So that should be pretty easy to do. And it looks like right here, if we collide with a game object with a tag called obstacle, it's going to do all these things. So I'm going to go to inline 43, and let's just simply say, take our particle, we call it explode particle, dot, and then the action we want is to play. Just play this animation. And I need to do some open, close parentheses, and then put a semicolon. And I'm going to save this. That's it. We just call for it here. We're going to put it in the inspector, and then when we hit an obstacle, it will play that effect. That's it for this particle effect. They're pretty easy. What I want to do, though, is make sure I put it on my player. So player, I'm going to lock my inspector, and now you'll see that I have a explode particle name here, and I'm going to, it says none. I need to just drag this one in because this is the one I want. Not from the hierarchy. I mean, not from the projects, because this is the specific one we want. They're not a prefab. Because we're not spawning. We're just playing an animation on something that's in the scene. So let's press play and see if we get that puff of smoke when we hit an obstacle or something tagged obstacle. Okay, and boom. There you go. Easy enough. Now, we're going to do the same process for running. But because running is going to be something that's going to happen all the time, we have to turn it off whenever we are jumping and when we hit an obstacle. So let's just real quick go back into our assets folder, course library, particles, dirt splatter. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag it into my scene. And I had not looked at this particle before I set it back into here. That is intense. So I'm probably going to adjust this really quick. So unlock my inspector so I can do that. I kind of just want it to not be so intense. It's a start speed. I might just go like 2. Now this one is like continuously playing because this is an ongoing one right now. And it is set to looping. So what we'll basically do is tell it to stop. We'll just have this loop the entire game. As long as we're in the air, though, and as long as we are doing obstacle, this won't happen. And I kind of want it to maybe rotate a little bit more. Get a little more like rotation. That speed is crazy. Let's do like 0.5. I don't think that's really changing much, is it? Let's stop for a second. Start lifetime, start delay, that's all good. Duration is a second, so it's just like every second is doing it. Gravity modifier. Let's look at emission, maybe rate over time. Let's decrease that. What if we do less of these over time? That's okay. I mean, it doesn't change the speed as much, but it's just not as many of them. I'm okay with that. What about our velocity over lifetime. Let's start with a lower. This is like a positioning here. Maybe if I decrease this down. Yeah, it's not really changing what I'm wanting. Let's reduce that speed modifier. If I go negative, it's going to go the opposite direction. I think that's okay. That's kind of what I want to do. Once again, you can play with colors. You can play with the way it's expelled from here via the shape by which it's rendered out. There's a lot of effects. This is okay. Just don't put it near his butt. That might be a little too blatant. I mean, that's probably a little too middle school-ish. I'm going to click here and transform. I'm going to go ahead and reset this. Oops. Hit this 3 dots and hit reset. And you know what? It just changed its rotation. I'm going to rotate it back around on the y-axis. What did I do wrong here? I'm going to Command Z and see what it was. It was on the x-axis and then it was 180. So you know what? Let's just change the position then. Let's go 0, 0, 0. There you go. And leave these numbers here. That's okay. So see what that looks like. Now the reason it's still attached to my player is I need to, because our player isn't really moving. It's sitting in one spot. So it's not moving, but I want to attach it to the player. So I'm going to drag this and make it a child of the player. So what should happen now is when I jump, you'll see that it won't get separate. It'll be attached to him, his feet. There you go. But I don't want it necessarily doing those things in the air. So let's go back into our player script and let's turn it off when they're in the air. Box player. All right. So jumping, if they are in the air and on the ground and the game is not over, then they're in the air. So let's go ahead and create our variable. We need a place to hold this. Public particle system, and we'll call this one dirt particle. We don't need to initialize it because it is not a component. It's going to be just an object we have. And if he jumps, then we'll just do the opposite. We'll say dirt particle dot stop. But whenever they are on the ground, let's turn it back on. Dot play. And if they die, then let's turn it off. Dirt particle dot stop. Pretty easy, right? Yeah, particle systems aren't too complicated. It's hard to do them well. As you can tell, I don't have a great eye for them. I have trouble making my particle systems look good. I know people who can work magic with them. So, okay, this won't work because we have not yet assigned it in our inspector. So I'm going to lock this and go grab this one from the hierarchy and drag it in. So now we should see it not working when we jump. So it's dirt, 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 jump, oops, off, and then when he dies, ooh, it's like it's still running here. So I want to go check and make sure that I put it in the right spot. Dirt particle dot stop. You know what? That should be working. I'm a little confused by that. I will come back and figure them back, and I realized my mistake. I forgot to set one thing inside of the dirt splatter option here is to get rid of play on awake. We are making it play in the script based on this here. It should stop as far as I know. So I think this is our error. So let me just go look and see. So if I turn it off at the very beginning, then when it hits the ground, it should turn back on. And that's what the problem was. So turn off play on awake was our fix there. So dirt is no longer there. So thanks for being patient with that. All right, the last step of this is we're going to be adding some sound effects. So the way sound works in Unity isn't overly complicated, so I'm not going to get too deep into it. There are some little features. Let me make sure I save. I haven't saved in a while. Command S. There are some things to note. So I want to go to my main camera. And I would like for you to note that there's this thing on the camera called an audio listener. And audio listener looks like there's not anything going on here. But the way an audio listener works, I'm going to click on my camera, is the camera, it basically is saying has a microphone attached to it. And because we're in a 3D space, if something makes a noise, how close it is to the camera does impact how it's perceived. Distance matters inside of this engine. So if something made a noise way over here, it would be heard a lot softer than something that is being made right here. And there are ways to get around that effect, essentially. So sometimes adding a song onto your main camera so that it's playing right next to the speakers, right next to the microphone, helps. Or putting effects on a player if the player is always near the camera, which in our case is what's happening, then all those things like feed into... Where's my player at? He's like disappeared. Weird. Did I turn off his renderer? Yeah, I don't know why that happened. Very odd. Anyways, if we put audio effects on him, then he's still near the camera and the camera will pick it up. So you have an audio source and an audio listener. Audio listener is always embedded on your camera. It's just done automatically, but we could change that if we chose to do so. And then you have an audio source, and where you put the source does matter. So for things like your normal music in a game, we tend to add an audio source near that microphone. So add component, and we will add something called an audio source. And the audio source has a lot of different things that we can control. And audio can get complicated within Unity. We can make songs blend into each other as you get closer and further, and sound effects that echo and pitches change. So when you walk faster, you have higher step sounds, all this stuff. But we're not going to be playing with that. The things we want to do is, since this is going to be a song that's going to be playing throughout, is we need to find what song we want. We want it to play on awake, and we also want it to loop, so as long as the game's going. And we'll have to play with this volume as well. So we might have to reduce this because we are going to have some sound effects. But first, I'm going to lock my inspector and go into my assets and see if I can go find, in our course library, there is a sound file. And it has music and sound effects. Let's go to music, and we have a couple different options. So if I'll unlock my inspector for a second so we can look at it. So it tells you here what the name of the track is at the very top. We don't really need to worry about this too much, but you can press play to get a sample. Yeah, okay. Pretty good. We have another option here. Pretty solid chip tunes. That's the type of music we call that, chip tune. Like 8-bit chip tune. Yeah, all these are 8-bit. So anyways, you'll choose one of these. I'm going to go back to my camera and go to this audio source. I'm going to lock this in now, this time. And I'm just going to drag one of these into this non-audio clip. And that's it. There's no scripting that's needed for this because we've already chosen for it to play on awake and to loop. So if we press play, we should have music rolling. Very simple. And as soon as I say that, I don't get music, which is interesting to me. Hey, so I figured out what my problem was, and it's something that gets me all the time. Yeah, so the volume of my computer was up. That's great. And if I go back to my main camera where this audio source is, all this is set. It's a little hidden thing that sometimes just drives me crazy. And it's hidden because of the way I have my scene set up. It's on my game tab. If I pull this over, there's a little button up here called mute. And I don't know why I had it mute or if it was automatically set to do this. But that's what was making it so I couldn't hear my sounds. So I should be able to press play now and hear it. Oh, yeah. All right. That was what it was. Great. So the last part of this is going to be adding on some audio effects onto our character. So I'm going to go onto our player here, go into player script, so our box player. And audio clips work a lot like these other variables, like our rigid bodies and our animators, is that we're going to create a variable to hold them, get the audio source, initialize it right at the very beginning, make sure that it appears, and then put a play trigger essentially down here in our methods. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do a sound effect for both our, I guess, jumping and when we hit the obstacle. So we're going to do a public, oh my gosh, spelling, public audio clip. And that's typically what we refer to sound effects as. And the first one will be our jump sound. Oh my goodness. Jump sound. And I'll do one for our just a crash sound. There you go. So in the start, we do need to get the audio source that is going to be on our player. So we're going to add an audio source to the player. The one that is on the camera is playing the main song, and then the one that's on our player is going to play the sound effects. So we haven't added that yet. We'll do that when we get finished with the code. So void start, we're going to initialize, which means get on start. I'm going to put it at the end of line 21, so I have the same thing. Oh, you know what? I need to set it as a private up here as a private audio source. Of course, I need to be able to call that, right? And I'll call it player audio. If you're going to put clips on any object, it does have to have an audio source. So even if we don't play a song on there, this right here will still control all the audio coming out of this player. So okay, player audio is equal to get component. My spelling is atrocious right now, and we're going to go get the audio source and initialize it the same way we have been doing. Finally, so we want this to be our jump sound. We will go into our jump. Now it's a little bit different than the particle effects where we say like just stop and play. There's like another slightly different command. I don't know why my it goes to the left. Okay, so player audio dot play one shot. So just play a single time is the phrase for clips. So you want to play one shot. And then we need to say the name of it. It will be jump sound. And then a play one shot has two parameters. The first one is what clip is being played, and the other one is a volume scale. And you'll notice here it says float. So it needs to be a float. So we have to put a decimal, and then a scale. And so the scale of the volume is between 0 and 1. So if we put a 0 here, it will make a sound. And the loudest we want it to be is 1. So we're going to just go with 1. We do have to put a 0.0. And because it is a float, in this instance, we have to put an F. And then put a semicolon. There you go. Player audio, one shot, jump sound. And then we're also going to do the same thing down here within our collision with obstacles. So player audio dot play one shot, and let's go ahead and name it as crash sound, and then we need to set its volume, and we'll go ahead and set it to 10F. And then I will save this. Now we obviously have not put this on our character yet, the audio source, so give it a second to load. Player, let me see what we got here. I'm gonna lock this up. Yeah, so now I have these two audio clip spots. So first, let's go ahead and add component, audio source. Great. We don't have to put any clips here. We're just gonna play this crash sounds here. So assets, course library, sound, SFX, and you have some crash sounds. I'm just gonna choose two randomly so I can end this video for you. And go with the jump 2. So I want to test this out. Just press play. All right. Now you did hear the crash sound hit twice because it seems like he's colliding twice due to the animation. It's okay. It's fine. Now, the volume definitely needs to be worked on. I would probably play with making the overall volume less loud. There's some things we could tune here. But, oh wait, this is the audio source total. But on the camera, I would make this one a little bit less loud in comparison. But that is it, man. We've done so much in this game. I will have another video about challenges I want you to attempt. We covered a lot. So take a moment, look through, think about what it is you've done. You've accomplished a lot by making this game, from particle effects to sound effects to rigid body. Get component, learning how to. You keep working on your spawning. There's just a lot that was done. So you should be really proud of what you've done in this project. And I will see you in the challenges.